We're recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the presentation, The Habitat Project. It's a beautiful sunny day in the middle of winter in Western New York. The Black Rock Riverside Alliance is thrilled to be part of the Birds of Niagara for the third year. As a heavily urban community, you would not think of us as a bird haven, but we are. We recently did a quick walk along the Niagara River to check on some of our new habitats and see what birds were out. And I'm happy to report we have tundra swans, mergansers, many varieties of gulls, and a multitude of different ducks. Oh, and of course our bald eagles, which I get to look at every day. This combined with hundreds of home habitats that have been created through our project gives us a place for hawks and other backyard birds to be with us throughout the year. Our habitats, of course, are the reason that we are presenting today, and it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Anne McCooey, the project director of our National Wildlife Federation Community Wildlife Project. Anne has grown this project from one home garden just about a year ago into a citywide project for the city of Buffalo, and her efforts are soon going to take us countywide. The best part of this project is that there is a role for everyone. It is inclusive, bird-friendly, and one of the most fun projects that I have ever been part of. I will let Anne take it from here and explain both the individual and the community aspects, and most importantly, how you can participate and have as much fun as we are. Anne, it's a pleasure, as always.
Thanks so much, Marianne. Yeah, as Marianne said, we started this project as, let's get a couple of people involved in creating a habitat in their yard, to now taking it as a regional initiative, which we're very excited about. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we are going to start talking about this as soon as I get the technology up and running. And we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the Habitat Project. So the Habitat Project really is talking about how communities and individuals can work together today to ensure a really healthy ecosystem for tomorrow, because that's what it's all about. And the way we look at it is the Alliance has a very specific mission, and it's dedicated to improving the quality of life for those that live and work in the northwest corner of the city of Buffalo. Our footprint is right along the Niagara River, one of the most amazing natural resources and waterways that we have in the northeast part of the United States. And we're really proud of the fact that we have such an abundance of wildlife that lives along our waterfront and in our communities. And so the Alliance, we do a couple of things. We have two focus areas. One is economic growth and development, and the other one is our environmental initiatives. Because we really believe, and that's the part we're going to talk about today, one of those initiatives, because we believe that a healthy environment really is a quality of life indicator. And so some of the Alliance environmental initiatives, for those of you that are not familiar with us, are community gardens, which produce food for the people in our neighborhoods, because we are primarily in a food desert. We do an environmental speaker series annually, which is actually how this Habitat Project came about. We do a sunflower project and a seed bank where we give away seeds so that people can beautify and provide food and pollen for some of our wildlife. We have native planting beds. We get involved in the ladybug projects and monarch butterfly projects and other initiatives like that. We partner with other organizations on their environmental initiatives and them on with us. We host the Northwest Buffalo Tour of Gardens, and of course there's the Habitat Project, which is the focus of our presentation today. So when 2 years ago, Marianne said to me, hey, we were thinking about speakers for our environmental speaker series in the springtime. And she said, did you know that the National Wildlife Federation has a program where you can certify your yard as a habitat? And knowing that I have an abundance of bunnies and a few other things living in my small city backyard, she said, I bet your yard would certify. Do you want to look into it? And I said, yeah, sure. And I looked into it, And sure enough, this is a great program. I found out that they've been doing this for over 45 years. It is a very grassroots program used to help create and restore wildlife habitats. It's easy. They provide so much education. The National Wildlife Federation has an amazing educational resource group online through their Garden for Wildlife program. So it's for individuals, they have some for schools, they have some on communities, and really it just tells you how you can provide the basic elements needed for a healthy wildlife habitat. And then they have their certified program, which if you provide those things, you can certify your yard or your community green space as a wildlife habitat. And then they also do this great Trees for Wildlife program where they offer you opportunities to learn more about planting and retreeing in your local community. And as people who are really interested in birding, we understand how important the trees and the tree line in our urban and our rural communities really is to those to creating spaces for those birds as well as for other wildlife. Today, the National Wildlife Federation has over 200,000 certified habitats, and they've planted trees. So I looked into this to do the presentation, and what I found out was it was really pretty easy. And so we're going to talk a little bit right now about what is a habitat and how your yard or your business space or a community green space can actually become a habitat, a certified habitat through the National Wildlife Federation. So most people, when they think of habitats, this is what they think of. Or this is what they think of. There's some wildlife. Myself and my kids, as we were exploring the Denali Park area one Mother's Day weekend. And these are definitely habitats. And when you say wildlife, this is what people normally think about. They think this is wildlife and this is wildlife and this is wildlife. And you're all correct, that is wildlife. But when we're talking habitats in terms of our own yards, this is more like the wildlife we're talking about, the birds, the bees, the butterflies, and the bunnies. And this is the habitat. This is actually my backyard. Not anything special or distinctive about it other than a normal sized Buffalo City backyard. And this is some of my wildlife. In addition to the birds and the bees, I also have bunnies. And they live in my habitat. This is one corner of my garden space, my backyard habitat space, in the springtime and through the summer, where I've got things planted in my raised beds. And the whole purpose, the whole way to go about getting a certified habitat or just qualifying it, even if you don't do the certification, but just qualifying it, is really planting with a purpose. This is my mom planting purposefully in pots so that we would help bring through our neighborhood the things that we wanted to thrive in there, the living things that we wanted to thrive in there. Now, I said that the National Wildlife Federation really gives you an easy way to get this done. They provide you with a checklist. So you can go to their website, you can download the checklist, and you go through your yard or your green space that you want to certify, and you just check off the things that you've got. And once you know you've met the minimum qualifications for each of these items, then you're good to go. You go online, you do pretty much the exact same form online, and that will get you certified. So what are the things that are necessary? We're going to use my checklist for my house that I did when I certified my yard as kind of the example, and I'll show you some photographs of some of the things that I've used in some of the cases. So the first thing you need, obviously, is food. You've got to have some kind of food for the wildlife. And this food can take all kinds of forms. And to remember, don't think about wildlife as just birds. And I know we're pretty bird focused on this seminar because it's part of the Birds on Niagara Festival. But you can talk about, feeding the squirrels and feeding the butterflies and providing pollen for the bees and the bunnies and the skunks and the groundhogs, all of which kind of come through even my backyard. So The first thing you need is you need to have 3 of the following types of plants or feeders. Well, I don't use feeders because the ladies 2 doors down from me have all kinds of feeders in their yard, so they take care of keeping those filled. I go with plants in order to do this, and so I provide seeds from various plants that I put in the ground, berries from bushes that I have, nectar from some of the plants that I plant, foliage and twigs from the trees nearby, and just from things that I leave around and about. That's especially good for creating places for bugs, which again, the birds like, and so do some of the other animals. Fruits and pollen. And here are some of my bees enjoying the pollen. Here's some of the blackberries that I have, the black raspberries that I have growing in my yard, and some of the plants that I have that provide nectar for the butterflies. And the fruits and berries, I actually have blueberries, raspberries, and grapes growing. And I use them kind of as part of, like, the grapes are along my fence. So it also provides a little bit of protection and other things as well. But the one thing that I really do is, because I have raised beds with things that I like to eat in them, I sometimes have bunnies come and visit, and they want to eat out of my garden, my raised beds, the things that I'm growing for me and for my family and friends. So what I do for the rabbits is I actually plant low pots, pots that are low to the ground, that they can reach without having to jump into my beds. And I put them away from my raised beds where I don't want them. And that way they will take a look and see what's in there, and they'll eat out of those, and they'll pretty much leave my raised beds alone. So the other thing that you need is a water source, and you can do that pretty easily. Most people, say, oh, well, I don't want to put in a pond, or I don't want to have to continually fill a bird bath. Well, you know what? A bird bath doesn't have to be something that's, traditional on the ground. I actually just use some old bowls and different size vessels that I've gotten and picked up over the years at flea markets and the MVET store and things like that. Very inexpensive. I put a couple in the garden itself, so that if there are any animals that are visiting or the birds are coming and getting seeds out of my flowers, they can help themselves. But I also have a couple of just hanging ones that are very inexpensive, that I've picked up. And with the rain and other things that happen, I very rarely even have to fill them. They just kind of are self-sustaining. And then for a butterfly puddler, I actually take the same hanging bird bath that I use in one part of my garden, and I just put some rocks in it and just make sure that the water is never higher than the rocks, because butterflies don't like to get their feet wet while they're drinking. And then you need cover, because you need to have a place for wildlife to actually find shelter from weather and from predators. And so I use ground cover. I also have brush, as I said, brush and logs, just odds and ends of things, often one corner of my backyard behind my garage. I have some berms that I put in to actually help with water drainage and water use in my garden, and those provide perfect places for burrows, and then some dense shrubs and thickets. So my berry bushes kind of do double duty there, because they provide a great deal of shelter for cover for the animals. With ground cover, you have to be really careful what you're planting. I actually planted some clover in my front flower bed last year, thinking that this would be great food for wildlife, but it would also provide some low ground cover in between my flowers. And what happened was I ended up with 2 types of clover growing in my yard, and one of them was very tall clover and kind of took over. My neighbors were very dismayed why I wasn't out weeding every day, until I explained to them that my yard was a habitat, and that I had 2, not one, but I had 2 families of bunnies that had created nests in the very far corners of my garden, and were utilizing the ground cover as protection for the babies as they started growing. And so that I couldn't even weed until after the babies were out of the garden. Explaining that to my neighbors really helped a lot, because 1, they got off my case about how come I hadn't been weeding, and 2, they also kept their animals, their dogs dogs out of my garden when the dogs were walking, because the dogs would get a sniff of the rabbits and want to go find them. So it was really very helpful that I could explain that to them. The other thing that I do to create winter shelters, particularly because we do get snow here in Western New York, is I take the branches off of my Christmas tree every year. Now you can either take your Christmas tree, if you have a Christmas tree, you can take it and put it out in your backyard when you're done undecorating it, because the birds will come and be in it all winter long. I actually take it and cut the branches off, and then I drape them over the ends of my raised flower beds to create what I refer to as little bunny huts. The underneath part will be open, and it will have grass there so that they have some place to actually, you know, find some grass to eat if they need to in the middle of winter. But it also, again, provides shelter for them. And I do that in a couple of spots in my yard. And here you can actually see the bunny tracks going back into the very back part of my corner lot by my raised beds. And that's where we had bunnies hanging out this past winter because of the bunny huts that we created. So they can be very simple. You don't have to do anything elaborate at all. You also need places to raise young. So nesting box, burrows, as I said, dense shrubs and thickets, and then host plants for caterpillars. I grow a lot of milkweed, which is helpful for the caterpillars. And nesting boxes. Oh, and this is one of the bunnies that was living in my front yard as it was starting to go out on its own and just kind of enjoying things. This one came out a little bit further and actually was next door visiting the neighbors to see how the other side of the driveway lived before going back to his nest. And this bird does not like my bird houses at all. I have 3 bird houses in my backyard, and I have a couple of birds that absolutely insist on every year building their nest in my gutters. And I have enclosed gutters, so it is really, really, really difficult to get in there and clean them out when they're done and when the babies are done hatching. And then you have to use some sustainable practices. And this is the last step, and this is the part that kind of intimidates people the most, but you would be amazed at how easy this is. So you need to do at least 2 of the 3 categories, and you have to have at least 1 practice in each of 2 of these categories. So for me, because I tried to be more environmentally aware, I have always, captured rainwater from my roof with a rain barrel. I've always used water-wise landscaping. So if I'm removing soil from one part of my yard and I have an area that's particularly wet, I use that actually to create my berms, which directs the water towards where I want it when it rains. And because my backyard is lower than the people who are behind me's backyard is, so all of their water drains into my yard. So the back corner of my yard can be a little wet at times, but I found that through landscaping, I've been able to control that and direct it a little bit better. And then I use soaker hoses, which are really wonderful for irrigation and water conservation. And I use a lot of mulch. Mulch is wonderful. It can do all kinds of good things. And then controlling exotic species. I had a lot of non-native and several very invasive plants in my yard when I bought this house a few years back. And so very slowly, as I'm redoing sections of my yard, I'm starting to remove the non-native plants. I'm using more native plants in my planting as I'm learning more about that and the benefits to that. I've been adding more native plants and now almost exclusively do not put anything in my gardens unless they are native plants. And then I'm reducing the lawn areas. My front yard now is about probably about half grass and half garden. And every year I just kind of extend the garden out a little bit more. And eventually my goal is that my whole front yard will be a garden area and not lawn. And then organic practices. I have never used chemical pesticides or fertilizers, so that part was easy. And I compost. And composting is really easy. And think of composting not just as, having a composter behind your house where you're throwing it in and you're spinning it and all of that and worrying about rats. Composting can be really simple. So a couple of the things that I found very helpful and one of the things I get most when I talk about creating a habitat is, oh my God, what about the rabbits? Well, I have a lot of rabbits in my yard. We have a lot of rabbits in the city of Buffalo. And one of the things that I have found is there are a lot of really good organic things that you can sprinkle around your garden to keep them out of your beds. I have a lot of tulips coming in my front beds, and everybody always says, oh, the rabbits they ate the heads off my tulips before they even got a chance to bloom. And I always tell them, well, you have a couple of choices. You can either plant daffodils because the rabbits won't eat the daffodils, or plant daffodils around your tulips so that they are less likely to get at your tulips. But then there are also products like rabbit scram, which is all organic. It's dried deer's blood. And you sprinkle it around, and I have found that that really helps. But like I said, the biggest way I have found to deter them from eating the things that I don't want them to eat is plant things that they will want to eat that are easily accessible for them and away from the areas you don't want them to be hanging out in. And then when you're talking about composting, even things like utilizing your eggshells, and I eat a lot of avocados, so I always have an abundance of avocado shells. And since I don't compost in my own backyard, I take these things and I will use them to actually plant seeds in when I'm starting my seeds for my gardens. And so I'll put some dirt in the dried out shells and the cleaned out shells. I'll put some dirt in there. With the avocado, you do have to poke some holes in it because they are very slow to compost, and they are also very hard. So put a few holes in there for drainage. The same with the eggshells, if you just poke a hole in the bottom of it and then put dirt in that, put the seeds in it. And then when you're ready to plant the seeds into your beds, all you need to do is like crush that eggshell and drop it into the hole. And that way you're fertilizing, you're putting nutrients back into the soil, and you're going to help your plants grow. And you'd be surprised at how beautiful the plants are when you do a process like that. So the benefits to certifying your yard. You actually become a member of the National Wildlife Federation community, and you get a really nice personal certificate. You get a year membership and a subscription to their National Wildlife magazine, which is amazing. You get discounts for their merchandise and their catalogs. You get their e-newsletter, which has such great tips on it's got wildlife stories, it's got gardening tips, and they have a whole slew of resources that are available to you. And you can purchase a really nice sign if you want a fancy sign for your yard to tell your neighbors that you have a habitat and that's why your clover is getting out of control. That's perfectly fine, and that's a great way to do it. This is the certificate that you get when you do qualify and certify your yard as a habitat. You can see I was number 215,489, and that was 2 years ago when I certified. So they have been growing ever since, and those are really nice. And not only that, but you get the beauty of nature coming up, because utilizing certain plants and having wildlife thrive in your yard will also make your yard look so much more beautiful. And monarch butterflies on asters, and even looking and seeing that domestic wildlife and wildlife can all cohabitate in the same space really makes you feel good about the fact that you're doing something right for the environment. So when the Alliance started this habitat project, our goal was really simple. We wanted to get people in the community to certify their yards. I did a presentation, we challenged people to do it, and we got 7 people to sign up and certify their yards, almost immediately right after that presentation. Well, then we found out, excuse me, that the National Wildlife Federation also has a program where you can certify your community as a wildlife community. And I thought, wow, that would be really great. So we decided we wanted to certify the city of Buffalo as a National Wildlife Community Wildlife Habitat. We started that project in May of 2019, and by the end of 2020, we had all of the requirements for certification of Buffalo as a community wildlife habitat completed and our certification was done. They told us it would be about 2 to 3 years to certify a city, or 3 to 4 years to certify a city as big as Buffalo. We did it in 18 months. Our next goals are to certify Erie County and Niagara County, which are the two counties that are right along the Niagara River area, where our bird festival is in full swing. And we want to certify them because we have recognized that we want a region-wide ecosystem where wildlife can thrive and the quality of life improves for all, because wildlife doesn't recognize geographic borders. So the bunnies in my yard don't know that if they hop a half a mile away, they're going to be in a community that is not a certified habitat. And they don't know that there may not be the same resources to them that there are on this side of the border of the city. So we really want to make this regional because we share our wildlife is regional. So the benefits to community certification are really pretty straightforward. It is a proven, and through the National Wildlife Federation, they have a great way to get this done and to get it done really well, and they support your efforts in doing it. So it provides the proven program framework to engage the citizens. This really is grassroots. This is get everybody involved. This is getting school kids. This is getting college students. This is getting, adults in the community. It's getting everyone involved in this project, and it's fun. It aligns with other community projects. So many communities want to reduce runoff and become more resilient in climate change, and this helps. It supports communities in creating and implementing wildlife conservation strategies, like creating a corridor for wildlife and addressing pollinator decline. It helps meet clean water goals. It helps beautify your community by having, native wildflowers and trees and shrubs. It helps build the community by getting people together. It's amazing how many people get excited about being able to say, I just did a habitat restoration project, or, I'm doing a tree planting. And then it also provides national recognition for your efforts, and for the opportunities for signage in your community. So how does a community become a National Wildlife Federation certified habitat community? Well, in Buffalo, we had some really simple strategies to get it done. First of all, we tapped into all of our gardening friends. For our Northwest Buffalo Tour of Gardens, we actually highlighted with a little H any garden that had been certified as a habitat. And we worked with the Buffalo Garden Walk so that they would get it out to their gardeners that this was part of the project. We also engaged our Parks Department, the administration and the staff, and they were fantastic. The staff would inventory the parks and let us know what would qualify or come close to qualifying. And then we would work with them to plan ways that we could either enhance the park, or that we could even create new habitats and spaces so that each area was able to be certified. And here's one of the things that we did. We created opportunities for community involvement. This is our local 135 on the United Way Day of Caring. We created what I think is probably the smallest habitat in the city of Buffalo. And it's actually a small traffic triangle on two very busy streets. And they came in and they dug out, and we had a planting plan, and they put in native plants, and we now have a habitat. We also got schools involved, which is a great way for them to get some hands-on learning experience if there's a conservation program, or even just to get them out into the field and doing some work. We have college students helping us dig out and work in our native planting beds so we could relocate some of the trees we've been nurturing for the last 5 years into other spaces. We had some high school students creating a habitat right along an expressway, which was awesome. And it's right by the waterway, so it's providing much needed resources on our bird and butterfly migratory pathway. We also have other programs that kind of complement the Habitat project. So I mentioned our native planting beds, our sunflower project, and our seed bank. In 2020, because of COVID, we actually had to do our seed giveaways remotely. So we had drive-up seed giveaways. People pulled up to the curb and we dropped seeds into their passenger side windows with our long reach grabbers. We even help people if they have trouble figuring out how to best install their rain barrels. We help support them with help and information on how to do that. And we partnered with other special focus groups, so pollinator groups and groups that are involved in native plants. We got them engaged to help us, expand on our native beds, do our tree distributions out of the beds that had already been growing, and really working on ways to get the pollinators healthy again in our community. And with this, this is what we did. We got over 220 properties in the city of Buffalo certified as individual habitats. And that equates to 126 private residences, 41 parks, 36 community gardens, 10 schools, 5 businesses, and 2 colleges. Everybody could do this project. And so we kind of tapped into all of those interest groups to get the job done. And it also stimulated an investment in the environment that normally would not have been made. We got a very small grant to start this project off and to do the outreach that was necessary to get everybody engaged. And we figured out at the end of the project that it took the average property owner invested about $50 per property to get their yards certified as habitats. 20 of that was the certification fee to the National Wildlife Federation, for which you get all kinds of great things. And then the rest was just simply buying some extra plants or a bird bath or a bird feeder or whatever they needed. So, but overall, this total project, we estimate with in-kind services and with staff that was dedicated to this through schools and through the Parks Department, the investment in our city and in our environment was over $25,000. And it wasn't painful for anybody to make that investment. And our Habitat Project goals are really simple. We want to positively influence the attitudes of community members about cohabitating with wildlife, particularly in our urban areas. 2 years ago, somebody posted on one of our community Facebook pages that there was a fox in the neighborhood. And instantly, people were, call the DEC. I have a gun if you need it. Let's get a trap. Call the SPCA. They were making recommendations. All the recommendations were made to get rid of, remove, or kill this fox. A month and a half ago, I realized how much of an impact we had when somebody posted on the same page, there's a fox walking down my street. What should I do? And in a matter of 18 minutes, there were 53 responses, and every single one of the responses was, leave it alone. It'll eat the rats, let it be. Well, we built houses in their backyard. Where do you expect them to walk? Those were some of the responses that happened. Not one of those 53 responses talked about removing or harming that fox. And that's what we wanted to achieve. And that's what we want to achieve not only in our community, but we want to achieve it now on a regional level. And that's what the goal of the National Wildlife Federation project is to do that on a national level. We also want to capitalize on the other initiatives that are happening on environmental issues in our city and in our county and our state and on the national level. We want to leverage the investment and commitment that these people are making so that we can attract more funding for big environmental projects that some of our colleagues and we may potentially be doing in the future. We want to be able to attract more environmentally focused businesses to relocate. And we want to increase ecotourism by providing a healthy environment for our wildlife. You can't have ecotourism if you don't have the wildlife here to bring people to come and see. And we want to set a standard for the state to follow suit in this movement. Because unfortunately in New York State, there are only now three with Buffalo, 3 certified habitat communities in the entire state. One is Lilydale, which has about 300 living people in it. and the entire village is a garden. The other one is Pound Ridge, which has 4,900 people living in it. And now Buffalo. So Buffalo is the largest. But given how much space and how much of nature we have and the natural resources and the wildlife that we have, this needs to become a bigger thing than just Buffalo or Lilydale or Pound Ridge. This needs to become a statewide initiative. The other thing that it's doing for us is it's helping us rank nationally. So in Buffalo right now, we are the 15th largest certified habitat community in the country. 15 in the country. When we do Erie County and Niagara County as certified, they're registered right now, they are not certified yet, but when we finish those certification projects, the Erie County will rank number 4. Buffalo will drop to 16, but we're okay with that. And Niagara County is going to be right behind us at number 18. That's incredible that we can rank among these other areas in the country and say we are proud of the fact that we are now a region that has made it a priority for us to be able to have wildlife thrive in our community. And more importantly, we want to see this. We want to see more pollinators. We want to see more birds in our community. We want to see our wildlife thriving. And so I'm going to pose to you a habitat challenge. Get involved. Go to the website, which is nwf.org. Look at the information that they have to help you fill in any gaps that you may have in your yard or community green space or health strip in front of your business, and get it certified. And if you're interested in getting your community certified, like we did with Buffalo and like we're going to be doing with both Erie and Niagara County over the next year to 2 years, visit the nwf.org's website at their community page, and they will tell you how to do it, how to register, how to put your team together, tips and activities that you can do to qualify your community as a community habitat. And then post your participation on our Facebook page, which is Habitat Project, Buffalo, New York, and visit our website at brralliance.org. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact me at brrconnection@outlook.com.
Can I add a comment?
Sure.
I think that this has been one of the most exciting projects that we've done with children as well. We have a couple of community gardens, and Ann and I participated in having one of the community gardens, the children from the community gardens actually certified the habitat. And we came in as the official inspectors the one day to make sure that the kids had done all of their homework and really looked at all of the different components. And it was a fantastic educating opportunity for them. And I've never seen the kids so excited in my life. I mean, they were jumping up and down and performing, and it was just a fantastic way for kids to learn. So I would strongly suggest that if you have young children or you have them in your life some way, get them to participate in this because it's really easy and it's so much fun.
It is. And, Marianne's right. And the beauty of this project is literally kids can do it. And if I can do it and kids can do it, anybody can do it. And every little piece helps. Every small plot of land that is purposefully planted with wildlife thriving is one piece of land that we're further ahead of when we're looking at bigger picture things like climate change and, erosion and all those things that come when we stop paying attention to our environment. So get involved. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me. I'm more than happy to help you out. And thank you for listening and for participating in not only the Birds on the Niagara, but our video today on the Habitat Project in Western New York.
Thank you very much. And anytime, come and visit.